90% of crypto funds exploited last year came from human error or front-end spoofing.
If a market gets out of balance and if danger looms, then the agents will just do the cautionary thing and evacuate.
You recently told a story about agent pulling capital out of a collapsing DeFi protocol before any human could react.
Everybody had those like goosebumps and was saying, oh, these things are autonomous. They're going to manage money very soon. Like some people even gave money to OpenClaw systems and then they lost it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dime TV. Today I'm with Patrick, the CEO and co-founder of Ampli. Patrick, it's very, very good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Pleasure.
To start, can you just give us a brief idea of what is Ampli?
Sure thing. So Ampli builds security and orchestration solutions for AI agents that autonomously manage capital on chain. So whenever an AI agent has to touch digital assets and the execution is supposed to be autonomous and frictionless, that's when Ampli comes in and delivers an on-chain policy engine, MPC grade, wallet security, and all of that in order to make that actually safe enough to execute.
Cool. So I'm very excited for today's episode because we are working a lot on AI these days, and lots of people are, but it's hard to find people who are actually 100% focused on the future of agentic trading and capital management. So I'm very excited to have you here today. On the topic of AI, most people still think an AI managing their money is still years away. How far away is it actually?
It actually is ongoing. And I think it's a very good question because even at specialized conferences last year, I was there with my friend Rench, who's the CEO of Giza. Giza actually were first to market with an AI agent that optimizes stablecoin positions across lending markets in decentralized finance. And he was sitting on stage on panels, and the other panelists would say, oh, yes, and then in 2 years, I think we will also see AI agents starting to handle actual value and money. And he was just sitting there smiling because it had been ongoing. And I think last year, they moved $5 billion in volume across protocols like Aave, Morpho, Fluid, things like that. And everything happened with their autonomous agents. So it is happening, but it's also happening in this typical early adopter niche, right? Like DeFi curious people, experienced DeFi traders that want to see how that can improve their operations, that come with their, let's say, retail-facing wallets. They connect to the system, and then they can start spinning up an agent. And now there's actually several companies out there like Zi-Fi and Sail who followed in Giza's footsteps and innovated in certain areas. So the space is actually, I think, ready for the next adoption leg.
Yeah, I think it was amazing to see how fast this product and this narrative actually came into place since last year. On Ampli's website, you brand yourself as the backend for agentic money. Can you explain that quote?
Sure thing. So as a company, we decided that we are not going to build intelligence that handles assets. We are agnostic to that and are open for various different strategies and use cases and specialized agents. And we view ourselves more as I said, like an orchestration layer in the middle where we want to open up distribution for these agents to different kinds of capital that wasn't really participating in that first cycle last year, which is what I would roughly, like broadly qualify as institutional deployments. And what we do is we break up the risk silo that currently still exists around the agent providers, where they're taking care of everything like the wallet, the execution, the intelligence, which I think works for certain use cases. But we identified a gap in the market there where we are breaking up that risk silo and we are separating the intelligence layer completely from the execution and security side of things. So we're like another partner in this governance setup. And we believe that governance has been one of the core weaknesses of DeFi in general, not only like agentic finance, but DeFi in general. And it's becoming more apparent this year, right? Like most of these exploits are governance related. And that's where we sit. We want to bring distribution, make access very, very easy, make integrations easy, but also arrive at a point where you can answer the question, can I trust an agent with my money or with my client's money? If you're an asset manager, that you can answer that more confidently.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the retail crypto Twitter people using AI agents to trade on hyperliquid or poly market.
Yeah.
But what are the institutions actually doing in the space now?
I think they are slowly getting their feet wet. We are talking to several institutions right now, and some of them are looking to operationalize this or productize this in a way that they were looking to make yield and from the digital assets accessible to the regulated, let's say, traditional finance markets. Obviously, traditional finance is just finance, right? And and they went through the motions of doing that manually. Some of them even experimented with agents before, and then they were actually waiting for a solution like ours to package this in the right way for regulators, etc. But I also think that we are in a very early phase of this adoption, right? Like as a startup, one of the biggest dangers you're facing is being too early. You want to cross that chasm to be very early, but not too early, right? And I think crossing that chasm is happening right now. So yeah, that's what's currently happening. And then a lot of these like trading strategies on like prediction markets, etc., they actually even use LLMs, right? Like they oftentimes use like Claude, like Opus to devise a strategy. Sometimes even have an LLM actively manage it, and that's something that the companies we work with in general don't do as much. They have LLM elements, like for example, to scan socials for extra risk management purposes.
Mm.
But overall, they like train models that are deterministic. So that's like I think going to be one of the core differentiators is like aside from how secure you can make something with using like a solution like Ampli on the execution side, another security element is definitely what kind of AI is even giving the signals, and using a deterministic system there has been proven like very reliable. Like they haven't been like hallucinating or anything like that. When I'm thinking about the risk in these companies, it's more like, as I said, the governance, the organizational risk. How easy would it be to, if you get inside, if you can attack them and spoof them or social engineer them, how easy would it be to get full access, right? It's not necessarily me being scared of what the agents do. But with LLMs, you probably should be more concerned.
Yeah, I think you said 90% of crypto funds exploited last year came from human error or front-end spoofing, not smart contract bugs. So is the real risk more on agents or on human being?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I learned that figure at Rect Summit in Cannes, which happened aside of the stablecoin summit there, and the security researchers there pointed out how most of the money exploited last year, and I think this continued with like Resolve and Kelp this year, has been because of human error or bad OPSEC, bad governance, low threshold on multi-sigs, etc. Not necessarily an exploit on smart contract. The last huge one that I remember was Balancer last year, right? Like in fall of last year, Balancer, I think V3 got hacked after they had already migrated, but there were still funds inside, and it was a smart contract that was not upgradable. So when the exploit happened, and like companies like Hypernative flagged it immediately, nobody could do anything, right? Like it was just a smart contract bug that lay dormant for many years. And I think that's going to continue to happen as we have like the better frontier models being directed at these vulnerabilities. And we're going to have a rough time, also in terms of code. But at the same time, we are having a rough time when it comes to these like bad governance and bad OPSEC
Mm.
setups. It's like, instead of obviously, if you want to offer products from DeFi, the closer you get to like a great user experience, the more you start sacrificing decentralization, etc. So that's when actually your OPSEC becomes more important, because you're in the trust me bro finance area more and more, right? So if I have to trust a team, they need to have like the standards of security that you would expect from just regular finance, right?
Yeah.
And I
So
think we,
basically,
we, we are getting there, right? Like, I think people are getting a wake up call with what is going on. So it's going to be a couple of rough months more, maybe a year, and then eventually we're going to arrive at a very, very hardened core product for decentralized finance. And I think that's when it's ready to actually transition to just become part of finance, right? Like regular finance is getting an upgrade right now, and blockchain is playing a huge role. And gladly, we have been battle testing these rails for a long time. So we also battle tested these rails before we knew that AI would use them, right? Which is pretty exciting. Like we were pretty much the beta users, I would say. So now we are actually very close to having these rails secure enough to do the next evolution step.
so we all know the use case of using agents to find profit opportunities, but do you think the main use case might actually be on the risk management side?
Absolutely. And it again depends on who your audience is. I think for, let's say, the average DeFi user, an AI agent brings an improvement in terms of the yield delivered because it's just more agile, more active. It seizes more opportunities. That's how Giza moved $5 billion in volume, right? Like, you would maybe expect that to be a type of wash trading, but it wasn't. Like, every capital movement was profitable and fruitful and made sense, right? Like, that the agent's very active. I would say that when you're looking at a liquid fund that has very, very experienced DeFi operators at the helm, the yield is not necessarily going to be better or higher, right? Like, good yield and high yield is not necessarily the same, but like, they know how to get the yield that they want. The issue is more that their office might not be staffed 24/7. DeFi is a 24/7 market, so like the agents, consuming a lot of data in parallel and being online 24/7 to watch the health parameters of markets. That's a huge value add to a fund manager's workday, in my opinion, and also to a fund manager's leisure time when he is not there to react. So I think that's the major thing. And then I might add the third use case, or the third value that agents bring, is on the UX side, right? And that's again when you are delivering to retail consumers. The yield is great, the risk management is great, but the main thing is only 0.5% of the global population has been interacting with DeFi actively since inception. And I think agents are going to be the way how you up those numbers tremendously. It's like, it's going to be agents on humans' behalf, and they're going to live in the back ends of neobanks of the next generation.
Yeah. You recently told a story about agent pulling capital out of a collapsing DeFi protocol before any human could react. For a trader, how much is this worth?
I mean, it's worth everything, right? I think there were two instances that Sale and Sci-Fi documented around the Resolve exploit, and I also believe around what happened with KelpDAO and Aave. And not in every case did the, let's say, the contaminated Morpho vaults result in terrible losses, right? Like with Resolve, it eventually got managed, but you don't know beforehand, right? So if a market gets out of balance, and if danger looms, then the agents will just do the cautionary thing and evacuate. And then you can, it's always, even in trades, right? You know how it goes. You very rarely are you going to be super sad about the trade that you didn't take on one particular day. It's more like taking a step back and assessing, and then being ready to deploy once you really understand the circumstances. And that's what the agents, documented, did and documented it in a very, very easy to grasp way.
Yeah. I think one of the most striking fact about crypto, like the institutional world of crypto, is that the most important thing for most funds is actually surviving.
Absolutely, yeah. And there are many cautionary tales, dead bodies that plaster the way of the market cycles, right? Like during COVID crash, many funds that people thought were super healthy blew up. And it's exactly that. You need to have survivorship bias, I guess. And if you're just staying in the market, that's actually how you win in a growing system.
What can an AI agent do in a market that the best human trader simply can't?
I would definitely say just, and we're only seeing the early stage evolutions of this, right? Like, processing a lot of data in parallel that you couldn't fit on a dashboard. You would need many humans in order to do that. The risk management that we already talked about, and then it's also this component of just solving blockchain UX for us, right? Like me personally, after like around a decade in these markets, I still sometimes feel uneasy when I sign a big, like significant transaction, right? Hardware wallets are at the moment improving with like an open standard to have like, you know, clear signing and have a better translated, let's say, UI for what you're actually doing. But for the agents, it's just machine language. It's native, right? So like once you like have your agent and you really taught it what to do and what not to do and what's supposed to be operating and working on, you can very, very comfortably rely on it actually not making errors, not being spoofed into something, right? Because it actually can read the clear data. So I think that's like one of the major improvements, advancements.
Mhm. Most of the trades in crypto and even traditional markets are already placed by algorithms. What are the changes that are going to happen when those algorithms can actually think?
Yeah, I was actually talking about this as well on the last question. Obviously, like finance has been dominated by algo trading, by, you know, Renaissance technologies and the likes for a long time. And for crypto, Visa actually put out a study in 2024 where they were kind of like in an accusing tone saying, well, 90% of the stablecoin transactions on Ethereum were done by bots, which was like MEV, right? Mine extracted value. So that's like sandwich attacks on transactions. For anybody that's not familiar with that, algo trading, etc. And as I said, it was more of an accusatory tone, but I would say, well, it's great. Like we already proved out that Ethereum and the L2s are ready for this type of transactions, right? And now that, as you put it, the algos learn to think, I would say one of the main things that's happening is that it is democratizing access to relatively complex financial products, right? I did a presentation at the World Bank at the beginning of the year, and you know the World Bank's mission is all about ending global poverty, etc. So like for like users in the global South that already have like a track record of sidestepping inflation through stable coins, figuring out low tech ways of sending money through text messages, etc., that have stayed unbanked for generations, they could potentially also like skip the being banked step and just get a banker in their phone, like an individual banker that then takes care and can operate all these complex financial products for them. And I think that's a pretty positive outlook actually in terms of what AI can do.
Yeah. Um, the last edge on the market was speed, and before speed, it was mostly data. What is the edge in an agent-run market?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that constantly. I would say, and I would say as we arrive at edge cases where intelligence gets better, but also intelligence gets commodified, there's still going to be an edge in certain strategies, that's for sure. But they're also going to be more easy to replicate. So regarding the replication aspect, privacy is going to play a big role, I think. And then also when it comes to blockchain-based interactions, you know, let's say in the digital asset management space, I think MEV is going to have like a renaissance where
Mhm.
there's going to be markets for who's first in a block, and it's going to even you will have a sub agent that manages that transaction and the value there, and this has to decide if it's still worth it to bribe for a certain gain, right? So, and once we hit an equilibrium there, I'm not quite sure. It's actually a pretty exciting story to watch.
Yeah, I think we can say that every cycle in crypto has its narrative. We saw DeFi, NFTs, meme coins. The argument is now that AI is not just another narrative. It's like the main thing that will push the new narratives.
100%. And I would say that there is a very significant convergence of blockchain and AI, right? Like one of the All In podcast guys, he did this infamous tweet in I think 2023 where he said exit crypto, pivot to AI, right? Which was very good advice in terms of being exposed to markets.
Yeah.
And also as a builder, I would say it was a good time. But at the same time, I would say that it is, as I said, actually mesmerizing how we've been experimenting with like different blockchain systems, and now we are facing this huge new trust issue. And blockchains were built to resolve trust issues, right? Like where we have like adversarial counterparties that cannot trust each other. I would say that agent to agent transactions would be very similar. You can frame them very similarly. So smart contracts can play a big role in that. And as I said, we as humans, we gladly battle tested the systems for a long time. So now we are relatively close to having them hardened enough so that they can actually, play their role. And yeah, if I'm, once I'm getting sci-fi, a bit more sci-fi and futurist about these things, I would also say that if you assume instances of AGI in this world, they might, out of self-interest, prefer transacting on decentralized networks where they could host their own nodes and validators, rather than using like whatever Mastercard is building right now, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be different. Like AGI is not going to do our grocery shopping or buying flight tickets for us. So I do believe that in the agentic payment space and agentic commerce space, the blockchain might not play such a significant role. Like maybe the incumbents with their rails, they just update the existing banking and payment rails with certain like policy engines. They don't have to be decentralized, right? We trust Mastercard right now as well. But for like asset management and potentially for these like more complex AI entities that could emerge, I think blockchain is almost inevitable.
Yeah, it's actually one of our main theses at Paradex, and many stuff that we've been building at the exchange. We've been thinking if a sentient AI agent can decide where to trade, what would the best venue be for them? And they would have to consider things such as privacy, fees, liquidity, execution costs. So most of what we've been building has been with that in mind to be like objectively the best venue to trade and to have AI agents able to trade on that.
That is such an important point, right? Like we've also like I think you guys have been doing a great job of getting your platform ready, both in terms of the experience inside that, the user facing side where they have the AI agent to assist them, but also to be discoverable by AI and be competitive, right? It's going to be a very competition driven thing. And other like DeFi protocols that we have talked to also experience this. They like one of our partners. They do advanced execution for AMMs like TWAPs, limit orders for AMMs, and they noticed how after the big Binance collapse in October last year, that the users vanished, not just on the centralized exchanges, but also in DeFi, that they had a huge drop off. And then they were talking to my co-founder, Xavier, a couple of times at conferences. And he said, yeah, and if they're coming back, they're not coming back themselves. It's going to be agents on their behalf. So you better upgrade your endpoints, get ready for this, be discoverable, just as you just said. And they're actually already seeing a result of this and seeing an uptick and seeing real agentic transactions coming to the system.
Yeah.
And we are also going to help drive that forward in the future.
Yeah, and we've seen all the exchanges building MCPs, connectivity to the AI agents in the past few months. So now it's more a debate that there is retail and entities, but there is also agents. It's like a third class of users. It's going to be used by everyone. So yeah, it changed lots of things. So it's quite interesting to see how it will actually shape the new wave of the market.
Totally. Although I would say we're also like in kind of a transition period right now where I wouldn't overstate the autonomy of the agents. It's most of the time still a user that gives its agent a skill, as you said, will install the CLI for a certain venue and exchange and give it the API keys, etc. So the discovery process that the agent does isn't as autonomous and advanced yet, in most cases at least. But we're definitely getting there, right? Like you have to optimize for this in the future.
Yeah. Do you think 2 years from now, every serious trader is running an agent on their account and the same way everybody has a wallet today?
Indeed. And this is where, I think a value proposition like ours is important. In many cases of like users nowadays, again, they're still in the experimentation phase with these exchange APIs and CLIs and skills. They would host the wallet for decentralized trading, or the API keys on their machine, or have it with the agent. That's not great. Not a great setup, right? Things can go wrong really quickly, and I think this is where adoption will also increase like accelerate once we have these like very sound security solutions in place that are readily available.
Yeah. Is there one thing about the economy of agents that people are still underestimating?
Is there a thing that they're still underestimating?
Yeah, one thing is in particular.
Yeah. Well, there are probably many things that people are underestimating, right? Like in my like group of like friends and traders and builders that we've been running since 2017, we in 2000 late 2022, I think, like around this or stable diffusion hype, the first stable diffusion hype, we created an AI channel, and the first article I posted was one by Tim Urban from I think 2014, where it's called the path to superintelligence, and he has this like drawing of like a guy who sits on this like line, and it just stops here and he doesn't know where it's going, and then the next version is like the parabola. It just goes up, and he was already once you're inside the parabola, our brains are not very good at handling that and understanding the speed and the acceleration. That's very true for markets as well. That's where TA helps, right? If you can draw the parabola, you can kind of understand. If you're in it, it's just very difficult to perceive. So I think this is also what's going on right now. Like the technological advances are becoming so quick that it's difficult to extrapolate that out. And that's a challenge for consumers, for people in the workforce, for businessmen, for startups, right? It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. What you're building might be obsolete in 3 months. Like
Yeah.
it's a real opportunity, a real like thing that can happen. So
Yeah. Maybe to talk a bit more about what you guys are building at Ampli. Was there any specific event or something happening that made you want to start this company?
yes, actually, two things. One of it was that my co-founder and I, we were like actively trading markets for a long time, and 2 years ago, one of the most bullish charts that we saw was stablecoin market cap, and there was no straightforward way to express that trade by just buying something. There might have been side bets like Ethena, etc., but it's not really what's going on. It's not the bull market of the tokenized T-bill stablecoin. So we decided, okay, if you want to participate in this, you need to facilitate it further by building a business around it. And that was like one of the things that kind of like sparked our interest and made us curious and wanted us to work in this space from the startup side. And then the other thing was that we had been advising protocols like tokenomics and go-to-market timing for many years, and the latest one was Giza that I already mentioned. So Giza was the first company building this for this use case. They were, a machine learning team coming from ZK that pivoted into this agentic finance space and kind of created the category. And they're friends of ours, and we like had front row seats seeing them build these agents. And then we were like, okay, we definitely need to play a role in this going forward. And then at first, our first steps was actually just wanting to build a neobank, which with agents in the back end, which I think was a couple steps too far, right? Like while we were doing this, we figured out, well, the underlying security stack is not in a place right now where I would want my mother to put all her savings in. And that we figured out that gap and had to build a lot of stuff ourselves. And that was when we decided, hey, we should actually make the company about this and eventually power the new banks that are coming after us. And so far, I think that thesis is playing out.
Yeah. What were the first discussions you had with prospects, or like I guess you started out with a exploratory phase of talking to people in the space. What were those first discussions like?
So yeah, that's also a very good question, because we made it a core part of our BD efforts, but also of our like product discovery efforts to go to many conferences, and especially my co-founder, me, I did like I think I did like 7 8 last year, and he I think did double the amount. And aside from building relationships with potential clients, with investors, etc., you can also like listen to what people are actually thinking about it, and where the pain points lie, and what they would require in order to put trust into a system like this. And we had many discussions like that. And last year, a lot of that was very on the education side. We, similar to how those panels went when people were saying, oh, in 2 years the agents are going to manage money, and Giza's CEO was sitting there smiling to himself. We also had a lot of talking to do that was more like, okay, this is what agents are doing right now. You might think that's not happening, but it is happening, and this is how significant it is. And then this year in February, I believe, when OpenClaw came out, that was the big spillover moment when suddenly I went to a conference in London, and I didn't have to do any explaining anymore. Everybody
Yeah.
had those like goosebumps and was saying, "Oh, these things are autonomous. They're going to manage money very soon." Like some people even gave money to OpenClaw systems and then they lost it. Um, and so like that was a big moment for us where that conversation drastically changed. Everybody was more like, "Oh, we need guardrails," and I was like, "Okay, I'm glad that we built them last year."
Yeah. Do you think OpenClaw is like the new operating system of the agenting, like maybe the early stage of the agentic operating system?
Yeah, the early stage, yes. I would say it's very experimental. It
Yeah.
has this goosebump moment and shows you the capabilities, and at the same time, you feel like the underlying chaos and the unreliability of it all. I would say that Ampli's agent control room obviously is the logical evolution in terms of operating system and orchestration layer, at least for financial agents, right? Like we have a very, very specific use case, and which is the agentic capital management. And for that, I
Yeah.
think it's a great solution because you can connect to various different existing agents that are already out there on the market. You can benchmark them against each other, and you can consume each one of them very seamlessly with just the same security stack that's underwriting every execution.
Yeah. I think NVIDIA CEO said it's the most important moment in tech history in the last 20 years or something. So yeah, even though it's quite experimental, still it's insane how much further we went since the launch of OpenCloud compared to just
Yes,
LLM. Like it just
yes.
gave everybody the ability to harness agents and to open so many new use cases.
And that's the parabola in action, right? That's how you know you're in the parabola, and that's just our like blockchain finance lens. Obviously, what's happening in other spaces is equally or even more impressive, right? This potential of eradicating diseases in the next 1 to 2 decades, like we are, you know, if we are at this like very, very, I would say, like sword's edge moment where we can mess everything up, but if we don't, there's like an abundant society waiting on the other side, which is very exciting.
Yeah. What do you think is the impact on jobs such as trader, risk management teams? How will agentic management will change their lives?
Yeah, I'm actually curious how that plays out because we have like similar, like several forces that pull in different directions. I would say overall in the, like, let's say the software as a service business, those huge layoffs are in part due to AI, of course, but also due to like an overhiring and overspending that happened during COVID when money was super cheap and we had 0% interest rates. So there's also like a bit of a use of the AI narrative to correct the overcorrection. And for like traders and asset managements, I think the way I see it is that the operator is not going to be replaced. He's going to be augmented. Like again, like from my sci-fi lens, it's always almost a little bit like cyborg style or cyberpunk style, where your capabilities are actually leveraged and you inherit some of the superhuman capabilities that an agent can bring. And this is also why people are saying like it's the end of the dashboard, etc., which to some extent that is true. Like obviously some dashboards are going to be very, very easily replicable or not very useful anymore, but at the same time you need an interface to interact with the agent, right? And natural language is not necessarily the best one. I've seen experiments like this in DeFi, like Wayfinder experimented with that super early on. Our CTO actually worked on a project that also had like this like co-pilot style AI that could do transactions for you. And I very talking to him, I very early criticized him for doing it because I was saying this is not, you are putting somebody in almost an empty room. Like if if they don't know what they want to do, they're getting exhausted by options, right? So I think a good UX still plays a role until we have Neuralink directly connected. Um, And this is how an operator actually receives that leverage and can consume that leverage and make it his own.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, you're building basically the guardrails for any operator to let their agent manage their capital. We are about to ship Dime Terminal right now on Paradex. So the main idea is it's an agent that is able to watch your account and act on a trust ladder. Are we both betting that the whole market is moving to supervised agents managing money?
I think we are, yeah. And it's, so one of the decisions that you're also making is where, like, how autonomous do you want your system to be? And I think for different use cases the answer is different. For the risk management, you need to achieve autonomy, otherwise it just doesn't work. You forfeit that quality of the agent completely, right? Like if you have to approve the agent suggesting something when you're asleep, you won't exit the markets when it's prudent, right? In some
Yeah,
other cases, doing a human in the loop via approval might be the answer, right? Like I could think of like certain cases on a trading platform where that does make sense, right? Like the agent finds, and I think probably you also have like a use case like that. The agent suggests a good strategy, a good trade window that's opening, and then you can decide if you want to take it or not.
yeah.
Yeah, like, but that variants of that I think are going to be prevalent across most venues.
Do you think that there is a market that will become fully agent run first?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I think you could argue, like going back to like Renaissance technologies, that there are many like FX markets in the world that are very, very algo driven, right? So I think the answer is it's already been the case, depending on your definition of agent, right? But yeah, also the edge case that I lined out earlier with MEV becoming a deciding factor in like blockchain based trading, that would also assume that a couple of years from now, the human operator that still does this manually will exist, but he's going to be a freak. And yeah, I believe very strongly in that.
Yeah. You also be a crypto trader yourself in the past few years. So, is there any specific coins or thesis that you're excited about in the crypto market?
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Like I'm not trading as much actively anymore because of my role as a founder. And but I actually went on a podcast on a YouTube channel earlier this year where I laid out a complete thesis, which was very much the thesis was what is the infrastructure for this upgrade to finance, right? And it had several projects in there. Not everything since then is doing like tremendously well, but I did mention my thesis for Hype and for Zcash, so that's like that's working pretty well. And I'll also still feel very optimistic, or am very optimistic about Ethereum. I think Ethereum as a settlement layer, like I have this idea of like a future where we would have a public blockchain that needs to scale its economic security high enough to settle a lot of like the tokenization that actors like BlackRock want to push. And then you would have a more permissioned side of things, which could be Canton. Like Canton also showed up in that presentation that I did. And then obviously Hyperliquid, I don't need to talk much more, but at the time was very timely. And Zcash, I actually had I got lucky because my co-founder and we spent time at Balaji's network school in Malaysia last year. And we arrived after Token Singapore. We arrived and was like just a couple days after they had a big Zcash meetup there. And shortly after that meetup, Balaji and Navaravikant and all these like very, very prominent Bitcoin OGs started to talk more about Zcash and how it's like a logical evolution of like Bitcoin's promise,
Mm.
etc. And I still, you had this moment where Zcash now had this exploit discovered, or this potential exploit discovered by the security researcher using Opus. But also, I was just from a charting perspective expecting like a Black Swan event just on the chart because it
Yeah.
looked like Bitcoin in 2019, which the COVID crash came after. And I didn't know what that would be, but it was that. And when you have a fractal like that, it's not guaranteed that it recovers. The fractal can break and it goes to zero, obviously. But it happened, and I was already in my mind, okay, how does the future here look? It's like they have a path, an upgrade path to prove that if the exploit ever happened or not, which is difficult on a privacy protocol, right? So they're going to do that. And either it's going to say, oh, it happened, there's unlimited amounts of Zcash flowing around, or they're going to say, no, our specialized security researcher using the latest model was actually the first one discovering it, which I presume to have more likeliness. It hasn't happened yet. But what they did is they apparently got a direct line to Entropic and got the the unnerved
Yeah.
mythos to look at the whole protocol just in terms of saying, okay, your godlike coding entity now told you it's perfectly secure, which I think is sufficient for a bull market. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously, I very strongly agree with you on hype and Zcash. Is there anything that most people overlook that you think people should look into?
Good question. I think Ethereum is probably in a way overlooked, right? Like we did have some interesting bottom moment with like the Bankless co-founder, making up his mind, and but at the same time, Ethereum is a huge asset, right? Like it's hardly a super asymmetric bet at this point. I was looking at smaller things, but then also when you like show them publicly, it's kind of irresponsible. I think there is something interesting going on in terms of like tokens and how we value them and what's their purpose, etc. And since the SEC got defanged in the United States, we are starting to get more interesting token models. Like the things that like MetaDAO is doing in the space are very interesting, and there are a couple of projects that launched on there that have good business model, like in the neobank sector, right? There's like tokenized neobanks out there. So, I don't want to name like the small projects, but there's interesting stuff. I'm bullish on neobanks that are going to run on DeFi, especially if they eventually decide to run an Ampli as well. But like there are projects out there that me with my background, I look at, I'm like, hey, this is really cool. Like, I started building something like this myself, so I have a good, I think a good eye for it. And there are a couple of things out there that are really promising.
Nice. And final question for people, like obviously we're kind of in this micro niche of people who are doing lots of things with AI, with crypto. For someone new into the AI and agentic trading space, how do you recommend someone new to start?
And that's a very good question. I think one of the great like points or aspects of leverage that the agents bring us is that they allow us to research so quickly. I'm using that super heavily on many different things. Like I'm not a developer, I'm a political scientist. We haven't talked about that yet, but um, I like found my way into tech because I got curious about the governance aspect of decentralized networks and about what smart contracts could do for us. So I had to keep up with the technology step by step, writing articles and reports on like tokens and teams that interested me, and that's getting like much more easy, right? All the manual labor that I had to do assembling the different pieces of information, an agent can do that super well, in my opinion, as long as you don't trust it too much. We'll make up quotes, but but like if you do it for your research, that's really useful. And that's also true if you are starting to like just want to build something. You don't need to be a developer anymore to create an agent that can interface with decentralized finance and can interface with protocols or exchanges like yours. You just need to connect API keys. You can have the agent research what that means, and you can do something that will get you further. But before you then deploy serious amounts of money into it, I would consider what existing solutions there are that you can also build into your stack. Like they're very cool, like open source solutions that have a similar value proposition to what Ampli does, but more for a like indie developer retail use case where it's all local on your machine, like the open wallet standard from MoonPay. So again, the agent will probably surface that to you and also give you the same advice that I'm giving. So
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for coming today.
it was
Think
an
you
absolute pleasure.
we
Thank you, Wayne.
highlighted lots of very interesting topics. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Cool.